Did Sauron actually survive the Lord of the Rings? Sauron is a Maiar, and Maiars are immortal spiritual beings, so despite the ring being destroyed, might he not have died? Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we cover The Lord of the Rings, A Song of Ice and Fire, The Witcher, and much more. The best in fantasy books and TV shows. Welcome. At the end of The Lord of the Rings, the One Ring is destroyed and Sauron's evil reign is ended. Aragorn is crowned, Legolas and Gimli go off on a road trip, and the hobbits head back to the Shire, restoring it to its innocent, natural beauty. Everything seems perfect. Evil is vanquished. The best way to end an epic fantasy story. But this is where our geeky attention to detail gets in the way. Because is there a chance that Sauron actually survived? Yes, the ring was destroyed and his tower collapsed, but isn't he a Maiar? That level of being in Tolkien's legendarium that is fundamentally a spiritual being. You can kill his physical body, but his spiritual being lives on and potentially takes on a new form sometime later. We see this most famously with Gandalf, another Maiar. His body is killed in his battle with the Balrog, but his spirit survives and he returns as Gandalf the White. And when Saruman is killed later in the story, he isn't dead so much as his spirit or soul is blown away. His spirit technically survives, though presumably never to inhabit a body again. And unlike those two, Sauron doesn't seem wedded to a particular physical form. Sauron makes regular use of his shape-shifting ability, or more technically, the ability for his soul to inhabit different physical forms, and seems pretty proficient at it. In the first age, he shifted shape frequently. In the tale of Beren and Luthien, he shifts into a werewolf, a serpent, and a vampire, all in short order. In the second age, he famously took on an aspect of fair hue, in Tolkien's words, for a few hundred years, and with it the identity of Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. That's how he managed to mislead the elves and Celebrimbor in particular to forge the Rings of Power with them. A disguise so good that the wise like Gil-galad and Elrond might have had their suspicions, but no one knew it was Sauron. Sauron was defeated by the last alliance of elves and men and had the ring cut from him, and then returned to menace the world once more, millennia later. I know he appears in the films as basically just that one fiery eye, but he does have a physical body at that point. So might he have just done it again, long after The Lord of the Rings? Well, just to clarify as we start, Sauron did indeed pour much of himself into the One Ring, enough that when he no longer had the ring he was seriously depleted, but he didn't pour all of himself into it. He kept some of himself back, so when the ring was destroyed, not everything of himself was destroyed. Something remained. So, did he survive? Let's start, as we always should, with what Tolkien actually wrote about all this. This is his description of the end of Sauron from the perspective of those outside the Black Gate. The earth rocked beneath their feet, then rising swiftly up far above the towers of the Black Gate, high above the mountains, a vast soaring darkness sprang into the sky, flickering with fire. The earth groaned and quaked. The towers of the Teeth swayed, tottered, and fell down. The mighty rampart crumbled. The Black Gate was hurled in ruin, and from far away, now dim, now growing, now mounting to the clouds, there came a drumming rumble, a roar, a long echoing roll of ruinous noise. Black against the pall of cloud, there rose a huge shape of shadow, impenetrable, lightning-crowned, filling all the sky. Enormous, it reared above the world and stretched out towards them, a vast, threatening hand, terrible but impotent. For even as it leaned over them, a great wind took it, and it was all blown away and passed, and then a hush fell. That last part, where the huge shape of a shadow loomed, reaching out, and then a great wind blew it away, that was Sauron himself, it would appear, a spirit or shadow blown away. Interestingly, this is similar to how Tolkien describes the end of Saruman's life, another Maiar. To the dismay of those that stood by, about the body of Saruman a grey mist gathered, and rising slowly to a great height like smoke from a fire, as a pale, shrouded figure, it loomed over the hill. For a moment it wavered, looking to the west, but out of the west came a cold wind, and it bent away, and with a sigh dissolved into nothing. This description is more specific, though. The wind came out of the west. That's figuratively where Valinor is and the Valar are. The implication is clear. The Valar, and perhaps Manwë himself, blew Saruman away, scattering his spirit. I think it's a reasonable assumption that, given the clear echoing of the descriptions, Sauron faced something like the same fate. His body was gone, so his spirit, or soul, or feia, to use Tolkien's word, was released out into the world and appeared as some kind of shadow or mist, which was then blown away by a wind from the Valar. So it seems that technically Sauron did survive the destruction of the ring, but his spirit was blown away. Which is all very poetic, but what does that actually mean? Well, Gandalf has a go at explaining this in the Council of Elrond. They really did have quite a wide-ranging discussion there. He says this: "If it, the ring, is destroyed, then he will fall, and his fall will be so low that none can foresee his arising ever again, for he will lose the best part of the strength that was native to him in his beginning, and all that was made or begun with that power will crumble, and he will be maimed forever, becoming a mere spirit of malice that gnaws itself in the shadows, but cannot again grow or take shape. And so a great evil of this world will be removed." Because you see, Sauron's situation is really quite different to Gandalf's when he came back, or even Saruman's when he was killed by Grima, for two different reasons. First, because Sauron had poured so much of himself, his strength and will, into the One Ring, so when that was destroyed, a large part of him was destroyed. But secondly, we shouldn't view Sauron as the same as other Maiar at this moment in time. Although, as far as we know, Saruman only ever had or used that one body, Sauron is the equivalent of a battle-scarred veteran, still powerful, but having lost a lot of his previous powers and abilities. He wasn't in possession of the ring, with such a large part of his soul, for one thing, but also he had been irreparably damaged by what happened at Númenor. He had been there when god Ilúvatar intervened directly to destroy the entire island continent, submerging it beneath the waves. All mere mortals were killed. Sauron himself was killed, his body destroyed, and his spirit left to limp back across the seas to Mordor. This god event was so destructive that he could no longer shape-shift. He could slowly take on a physical form once more, but only one that represented his true being, that of an evil tyrant. Put simply, his Maya ability to take on a physical form had been irreparably damaged. This is why, with the One Ring cut from his finger at the end of the Second Age, he disappeared for so long. It took him millennia to regain his strength, and when the One Ring is destroyed at the end of the Third Age, in Gandalf's words again, his fall was so low that none can foresee his arising ever again. All of which brings us to the startling conclusion that, technically, yes, Sauron did survive the end of The Lord of the Rings. It's just that, to all intents and purposes, he could no longer play a part in history. He could no longer take a physical form or influence events to any significant degree. He is now just a spirit of malice that gnaws itself in the shadows. Tolkien would not, of course, have us think that evil was therefore defeated full stop. Other evils there are that may yet come, for Sauron is himself but a servant or emissary. Yet it is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the succour of those years wherein we are set, uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule. Indeed, Tolkien even started writing a sequel to The Lord of the Rings exploring this very idea called The New Shadow. I've done a video about that if you're interested. It was set 100 years into the reign of Aragorn's son Eldarion. Tolkien stopped writing it just 13 pages in for reasons I explain in that video, but we are left with a perhaps unintentional cliffhanger. where Borlas, an old man and the protagonist of the extract we have, smells, as it were, the scent of an old evil. Yes, Sauron was gone, defeated, dead, but also he lived on, as a spirit that cannot take bodily form, and in echo, or as a memory of the scent of evil, just as he was the echo of the earlier, even more powerful evil of his master Morgoth. If you'd like to see more videos about Tolkien's Legendarium, please click on the link to the playlist on the left of your screen. Or if you'd like to support this channel, thank you. There's a link to my Patreon page on the right of the screen. Thanks for watching. That's all for this time. I'll see you again soon.